The shed smelled like wet dog and broken dreams when I first pushed open that warped door 3 months ago. Standing there with my 2 suitcases and a black eye I'd covered with concealer, I thought this had to be rock bottom. My name is Lillian, and at 35, I'd finally learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what you're really made of. "You're seriously going to live in that thing?" My cousin Gillian had laughed when I'd announced my plans at Grandma's funeral. She'd gestured at the rotting structure behind the main house like it was radioactive. "It's literally falling apart." "It has good bones," I said quietly, which only made her laugh harder. That was 6 weeks ago. Today I stood in the same doorway, but everything felt different. The musty smell was gone, replaced by fresh pine and possibility. I'd spent every dollar I had, and some I'd borrowed, gutting this place, ripping out mouldy insulation with my bare hands, scrubbing decades of neglect from the walls until my knuckles bled. My phone buzzed. Another group text from the family chat I wasn't invited to, but somehow still received. Screenshots had a way of finding me. Madison. Drove by the property today. She's actually trying to make that doghouse livable. Bless her heart. Gillian. Mum, stop. It's embarrassing. What if people see? Marin. Maybe we should check on her. She's been through a lot. Gillian. She made her choice. We all told her Angelo was bad news. I set the phone down harder than necessary. They told me Angelo was bad news after I'd shown up to Christmas dinner with fingerprint bruises on my wrists. Before that, he was charming and successful. Before that, when I'd tried to tell them he was isolating me from friends, they'd said I was too sensitive and looking for problems. The same way they'd said I was too sensitive when kids at school called me weird. The same way they'd said I was dramatic when I'd cried about being left out of family trips. Always too much of something, never enough of anything else. I walked to the old filing cabinet I'd found buried under a tarp in the corner. Grandma had used this shed as her craft room before arthritis made the stairs to the main house too difficult. I'd kept most of her things, the sewing machine, boxes of fabric, mason jars full of buttons, things nobody else wanted. The bottom drawer stuck, like it always did. I yanked it open to grab some sandpaper, and that's when I saw it. An envelope, yellowed with age, taped to the inside back panel of the drawer. My name was written across it in Grandma's careful script. Lillian only. My hands shook as I peeled away the old tape. Inside was a folded letter and what looked like legal documents. The letter was dated just 2 months before Grandma died. My dearest Lillian, if you're reading this, it means you found your way back to the shed. I always knew you would. This place was our sanctuary, wasn't it? Where I'd sneak you cookies when your mother was on one of her diets. Where you'd hide when the world felt too loud. I need you to know something, sweetheart. The shed isn't all I left you. My breath caught. I flipped to the legal documents with trembling fingers. Property deed, transfer of ownership, not just for the shed, for everything. The main house, the 3 acres, the old barn, all of it, transferred to me through a trust that bypassed probate entirely, signed, sealed and filed with the county 2 years ago. I read the deed 3 times before it sank in. While my family had been dividing up Grandma's jewellery and arguing over her china cabinet, I'd inherited the entire estate, and they had no idea. The letter continued. I know they think you're fragile, Lillian. I know they've made you believe it too, but I see who you really are. I see the strength you've hidden to keep peace. I see how you've sacrificed yourself to make others comfortable. The shed was never meant to be your prison, sweetheart. It was meant to be your fortress. Use it wisely. All my love. Grandma. I sank into the old rocking chair, Grandma's chair, and stared at the papers. Outside, I could hear a car pulling into the driveway. Probably another family member coming to check on me, now that the weather was getting cold. Coming to see if I'd given up yet. But I hadn't given up. I'd been building something. And that's the moment I knew. Grandma didn't just leave me the shed. She left me something else, something they'll all regret ignoring. I folded the documents carefully and slipped them back into the envelope. Then I walked to my new kitchen. Yes, I had a kitchen now, and put on a pot of coffee. I had some planning to do. The sledgehammer felt good in my hands. Too good, maybe. I'd been swinging it at the rotted support beam for 20 minutes, and my shoulders screamed, but I couldn't stop. Every swing was Angelo telling me I was worthless. Every crack was Gillian's perfect laugh at family dinners. Every splinter was Madison saying, "Bless your heart," like it was a curse. "Whoa there, Rocky, you're gonna bring the whole thing down." I spun around, hammer raised. A guy about my age stood in the doorway, tool belt slung low on his hips, grinning like he'd caught me doing something embarrassing. "Sorry," he said, hands up. "Didn't mean to startle you. I'm Kyson. I do construction around here. Heard you might need some help." "I'm fine." I lowered the hammer but didn't set it down. "Who told you that?" "Mrs. Patterson at the hardware store said you've been buying supplies like you're building Noah's Ark." He gestured at the pile of lumber stacked against the wall. "Also said you looked like you hadn't slept in a week." I caught my reflection in the window. Hair in a messy bun, paint-stained clothes, dark circles under my eyes. He wasn't wrong. "I can handle it myself." "I'm sure you can." He stepped inside, examining my work. "But that beam you're trying to remove, it's load-bearing. Take it out wrong and you'll be wearing the roof as a hat." I looked up at the ceiling, then back at the beam. "Oh, yeah, oh." He pulled out his phone. "Mind if I take some measurements? I can draw up a plan that won't kill you, won't charge for the consultation." "Why would you help me for free?" Kyson shrugged. "Your grandma used to bring my crew lemonade when we worked on the Patterson place next door. She was good people. Figure I owe her one." Something in my chest loosened. She was good people. "Plus," he added with a grin, "I'm curious to see what you're building. This is either going to be amazing or a spectacular disaster." "Gee, thanks for the confidence." "Hey, I'm rooting for amazing." We spent the next hour going over my plans. I'd sketched them on napkins and grocery receipts, but Kyson nodded like I was presenting blueprints. "You want to keep the original footprint?" "Yeah, Grandma loved this space. I just want to make it livable." "What about plumbing?" "Already ran a line from the main house. Had to dig the trench myself because I couldn't afford a crew." He raised an eyebrow. "You dug 100-foot trench by yourself?" "YouTube is a hell of a teacher." "Damn. Okay, what about electrical?" "Licensed electrician did that part. I'm stubborn, not stupid." Kyson laughed. "I like you already." "What's your budget?" I told him. His face didn't change, but I saw him mentally adjusting his plans. "We can work with that. I know some suppliers who owe me favours, and I charge fair." "Define fair." 20 an hour, and you feed me lunch." I stared at him. "That's half what contractors usually charge." "Yeah, well, I'm not most contractors. Besides, I've got time between bigger jobs. Consider it my good deed for the year." My phone buzzed. Another screenshot from the family group chat. "Gillian. Drove by again. She's got some guy over there now. Think she's dating already." Madison. That was fast. Poor Angelo probably dodged a bullet. Marin. Maybe we should invite her to dinner. She looks thin. Gillian. She looks crazy. Did you see all that lumber? She's trying to build a house out of a shed. It's embarrassing. I set the phone face down, but Kyson had already seen my expression change. "Family?" he asked. "Something like that." "The kind that kicks you when you're down." "The kind that kicks you and then asks why you're bleeding." Kyson nodded like he understood. "I've got family like that. Sometimes the people who share your blood are the last ones to see your worth." "Yeah, well, their loss." "Exactly." He stood up, brushing sawdust off his jeans. "So, we doing this or what?" "We?" "I'm invested now. Plus, I want to see their faces when they realise you built something incredible right under their noses." I looked around the shed, my shed, at the plans scattered across Grandma's old workbench, at this stranger who'd shown up offering help when my own family couldn't be bothered to check if I was alive. Okay, I said, but I'm warning you, I'm particular about how things get done. Wouldn't expect anything less from someone who dug 100-foot trench with a shovel. That afternoon, I drove to the lawyer's office with the deed tucked in my purse. The receptionist looked at me like I'd wandered in from the street, which, to be fair, I had. I was still covered in sawdust and smelled like pine sap. I need to verify some property documents, I told her. 20 minutes later, I walked out with official confirmation. The property was mine, all of it. The transfer had been legal and binding, filed 2 years before Grandma died. There was no contest, no loophole, no way for anyone to take it from me. They thought I was just squatting in a box. Turns out I owned the whole damn estate. The storm hit on a Tuesday night in October. I watched from my newly installed picture window as rain hammered the main house, water cascading from broken gutters Madison had been meaning to fix for 3 years. My little fortress stayed bone dry. My phone started buzzing at 6 a.m. "Lillian, honey, I hate to bother you." Madison's voice was syrupy sweet, nothing like her usual clipped tone. "But we had some water damage last night, just wondering if you might have space for a few things while we sort out repairs." "What kind of things?" "Oh, just some furniture, maybe a place for me to stay for a night or two." I looked out at the main house. Water stains ran down the siding like mascara tears. "Sorry, Mum, I barely have room for myself here." "But surely you could—" "I have to go. Kyson's coming by to finish the flooring." I hung up and immediately got another call. Gillian this time. "Lillian, I know we haven't talked much lately, but I'm in a bit of a bind." "What kind of bind?" "Garrett left." Her voice cracked. "Cleaned out our accounts and disappeared. I can't make the mortgage payment, and the bank is, well, they're not being understanding." "I'm sorry to hear that. I was wondering if I could crash with you for a while, just until I figure things out." "In the shed?" "Well, yes, I mean you've fixed it up, right? It can't be that small." "It's a studio, Gillian. 1 room, 1 bed." "I could sleep on the couch." "I don't have a couch." Silence. Then, "You're really going to turn away family? You called it a doghouse 6 weeks ago." I was grieving Grandma. I didn't mean—" "I have to go." The calls kept coming. Marin's boyfriend had been arrested for embezzling from his company. She needed somewhere to stay while she figured out her finances. Could she maybe park her RV on the property? "There's no hookups for an RV," I told her. "I could run an extension cord from your place." "No?" "Lillian, please, I'm family." "So was I when you all laughed about me living in a rotting doghouse." By Thursday, they'd moved from phone calls to showing up in person. Madison arrived first, mascara smudged, carrying a suitcase. "Sweetie, I know you're upset with me, but I'm your mother. Surely you wouldn't leave me homeless." She stood in my doorway like a sad puppy, but I'd learned to see past the performance. This was the same woman who told people at Grandma's funeral that I was going through a phase when they asked about my black eye. "The Red Roof Inn has weekly rates," I said. "I can't afford a hotel." "The insurance company is being difficult about the water damage." "That sounds like a you problem." Her face shifted, the mask slipping. "Don't you dare speak to me like that. I raised you better than this." "No, you didn't. You raised me to be convenient. There's a difference." I closed the door. Friday brought Gillian, looking nothing like the polished woman who'd sneered at my inheritance. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her hair unwashed. She'd been crying. "I lost the house," she said without preamble. "Foreclosure. I have nowhere to go." "What about your friends?" "They're not available." "Ah, fair weather friends. I know the type." "Please, Lillian, I know I haven't been the best cousin, but we're blood. That has to count for something." "Blood didn't count when you told everyone I was unstable for leaving Angelo. Blood didn't count when you laughed about me living in Grandma's shed. Why should it count now?" "Because I'm desperate." The words exploded out of her. "I have nothing left. My husband's gone, my house is gone, my credit is destroyed. I'm sleeping in my car. The Honda or the BMW?" Her jaw tightened. The BMW. Must be rough, sleeping in luxury leather seats. You're enjoying this? A little. She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. You've changed. No, I've just stopped pretending to be smaller than I am to make you comfortable. That weekend, I installed security cameras, 4 of them covering every angle of the property. Kyson helped me run the wiring. Expecting trouble? He asked. Expecting family? Same thing, huh? Pretty much. I also changed the locks on the main house. It was my house now, after all. No point in letting people wander through uninvited. Sunday evening, I sat on my new porch. Yes, Kyson had built me a porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. My phone buzzed with another group text screenshot. Madison. She's lost her mind, completely heartless. Gillian. I always knew she was selfish, but this is next level. Maren. Maybe if we all go together, present a united front? Madison. Good idea. She can't turn away all of us. I smiled and took a sip of my wine. They were lining up outside my doghouse. But they were walking straight into Grandma's final lesson. Let them come. I was ready. I sent the text on a Wednesday morning. Family gathering this Saturday, 2 p.m. Come see what I've done with the place. The responses came fast. Madison. Oh, honey, I'm so glad you're ready to make amends. Gillian. About time. We need to talk. Maren. Can't wait to see it. Should I bring anything? Just yourselves, I replied. Kyson found me, Friday night, obsessing over cheese placement on a charcuterie board. You know they're not coming for the food, right? He said. I know exactly why they're coming. And you're ready for that? I looked around my transformed space. Exposed beam ceilings with Edison bulb fixtures, reclaimed wood floors that gleamed like honey. A kitchen island made from an old door, painted sage green. Built-in bookshelves lined one wall, filled with Grandma's books and my own. The Murphy bed was tucked away, making the space feel twice as large. I'm ready. Saturday arrived grey and drizzly. I'd positioned Grandma's letter in a shadow box behind a false panel near the bookshelf, invisible unless you knew where to look. The security cameras were recording. Everything was set. They arrived together, like a delegation. Madison led the charge, followed by Gillian and Maren. Sadie trailed behind, looking uncomfortable. Oh my goodness, Madison breathed, stepping inside. Lillian, this is actually beautiful. Gillian's mouth hung open. She turned in a slow circle, taking in the vaulted ceilings, the farmhouse sink, the vintage brass fixtures. How did you afford all this? She asked. Sweat equity, and Kyson worked for practically nothing. This is incredible, Maren said, running her hand along the butcher block countertop. It's like something from a magazine. Sadie hadn't said anything. She stood near the bookshelf, studying Grandma's old photos. Well, Madison said, settling into one of my 2 chairs, I have to admit I was wrong about this place. You've really made something special here. Thank you. Which is why I think we should talk about the future, Gillian said. Now that you've proven the space has potential, maybe we should discuss selling the property. Split the proceeds fairly among the family. Selling? The main house needs too much work, Madison added. And honestly, sweetie, this little place is cute, but you can't live in a shed forever. You need to think practically. I am thinking practically. Are you? Gillian pulled out her phone. Because I've been researching property values in this area, we could get good money for the land alone. Enough for you to buy a real house somewhere else. This is a real house. You know what I mean. Sadie wandered toward the kitchen, then stopped at the bookshelf. She was looking at something behind the books. The thing is, Madison continued, we're family. We should stick together, especially now that we're all going through difficult times. If we sell, everyone benefits. Everyone except me, you mean, since I'd have to give up my home. It's not really your home, though, is it? Gillian's voice had an edge now. Grandma left you the shed. The property belongs to all of us. Does it? Of course it does. Grandma wouldn't have left everything to one person. That's not fair. Sadie had found the hidden panel. Her fingers traced the edge of the shadow box. "What's fair," I said, "is honouring what Grandma actually wanted." "Which was for family to take care of each other," Madison said firmly, "not for one person to hoard everything while the rest of us struggle." "Hoard everything?" I laughed. "You mean like how you hoarded Grandma's jewellery, or how Gillian hoarded her china cabinet, or how Maren hoarded her silver?" "That's different," Gillian snapped. "Those were personal items." And this was personal too. Grandma's sanctuary, the place she came when she needed peace. Sadie had opened the panel. She stared at the framed letter, her face pale. "What's that?" Maren asked, noticing Sadie's expression. "Nothing," Sadie said quickly, closing the panel, but Madison had seen her reaction. "Sadie, what did you find?" "It's nothing, Grandma, just some old photos. Show me." "Mum, leave her alone," Gillian said. "We're getting off track. Lillian, we need a decision about the property." "I've already made my decision." "Which is?" "I'm keeping it." "That's selfish," Madison said, "and honestly, I'm disappointed. I raised you better than this." "No, you raised me to be convenient, to make myself small so everyone else could feel big, but I'm done with that." "You can't just decide to keep everything," Gillian said. "There are legal processes, probate, estate division." "Is there?" Something in my tone made them all look at me differently. "What do you mean?" Madison asked. Sadie looked at me, eyes wide. She was the first to understand what this meant, but she stayed quiet. "Why?" "I mean," I said, refilling my wine glass, "maybe you should check your assumptions about what Grandma actually left behind." The room went silent except for the rain pattering against the windows. "What are you saying?" Gillian's voice was barely above a whisper. I smiled and took a sip of wine. "I'm saying this is going to be a very interesting conversation." I walked to the bookshelf and opened the hidden panel. Sadie stepped back, her face white as paper. "Grandma left me something else," I said, lifting out the shadow box. "Something she wanted me to find when I was ready." "What is that?" Madison's voice was sharp. "A letter written 2 months before she died." I set the frame on the kitchen island where everyone could see it. "Should I read it out loud, or would you prefer to read it yourselves?" Gillian snatched it first. Her eyes moved across the page, and I watched her face change from confusion to shock to something like terror. "This is fake," she whispered. "Is it? It has to be. Grandma wouldn't—" "She didn't?" "Didn't what?" Madison grabbed the frame. "What does it say?" I took it back and cleared my throat. "My dearest Lillian, if you're reading this, it means you found your way back to the shed. I always knew you would. This place was our sanctuary, wasn't it?" "Stop," Gillian said. I kept reading. "I need you to know something, sweetheart. The shed isn't all I left you. I've transferred the entire property to you through a trust. The house, the land, everything. It's yours." Madison's wineglass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Red wine spread across my beautiful floors like blood. "That's impossible," she breathed. "But wait, there's more." I flipped the page. "I know they think you're fragile, Lillian. I know they've made you believe it too. But I see who you really are. I see the strength you've hidden to keep peace." "Lillian, stop this," Maren said. "This isn't funny." "You're right. It's not funny at all." I kept reading. "I remember when you were 8, crying because the kids at school were calling you names. Instead of helping you, Madison told you to stop being so sensitive. She said you brought it on yourself by being different." Madison's face went grey. "I never said that." "I remember when you were 16 and needed money for college applications. Gillian had convinced me to lend her $5,000 for her emergency. She never paid it back. Your college fund went to her spring break trip to Cabo." "That's not true," Gillian's voice cracked. "I remember when you were 22 and Madison stole the money I'd saved for your wedding. She said it was a family emergency and promised to pay it back. She used it to remodel her kitchen." "I borrowed it," Madison whispered. "I was going to pay it back." "When? It's been 13 years." Sadie had sunk into my other chair, staring at us all like we were strangers. I remember, I continued reading, when you came to Christmas dinner with bruises on your arms, and instead of helping you leave Angelo, they told you marriage was hard work. They told you to try harder. They told you that you were probably misunderstanding his intentions. We were trying to help, Maren said weakly. Were you? Because when I finally left him, you all said I was being dramatic. You said I was giving up too easily. We didn't know how bad it was, Madison said. Because you didn't want to know. It was easier to blame me for being too sensitive than to admit you'd failed to protect me. I turned back to the letter. They took from you, Lillian. They took your confidence, your money, your safety, your peace. They made you believe you were the problem when they were the ones who couldn't love you properly. Gillian lunged for the frame. Give me that! I held it away from her. This house is yours, sweetheart, not just the shed, everything, because you were the only one who ever brought me peace. You were the only one who visited me just to visit, not because you needed something. You were the only one who saw me as a person instead of a bank account. This is insane, Gillian said. You can't just steal our inheritance. I didn't steal anything. Grandma gave it to me, legally, 2 years ago. I pulled out the deed from behind the letter. It's all here, notarized, filed with the county, completely legal. Madison grabbed the deed with shaking hands. This can't be real. Call the courthouse if you want. It's public record. But why? Maren's voice was small. Why would she do this? I looked at each of them, these people who'd shaped my entire life, who'd made me believe I was broken and difficult and too much trouble. Because, I said, she finally saw what I'd always known, that you never loved me. You loved the idea of having someone to blame for everything wrong in your lives. That's not true, Madison said, but her voice was hollow. Isn't it? When's the last time any of you called me just to see how I was doing? When's the last time you invited me somewhere without needing a favour? When's the last time you defended me instead of telling me to be smaller, quieter, more convenient? Silence. Grandma saw it all, I said. Every slight, every dismissal, every time you made me feel like I was the problem. And she decided enough was enough. Gillian's face was red with rage. You manipulated her. You turned her against us. I didn't have to. You did that all by yourselves. Sadie stood up suddenly. I need some air. She walked out without another word. That night, they didn't ask to stay. They demanded to know how I dared keep secrets, and I smiled, because for once, I had all the power. The legal papers arrived on Tuesday, hand-delivered by a process server who looked apologetic. Gillian Wood versus Lillian Ellis, he said, contest of will and property transfer. I signed for them and called my lawyer. They're claiming undue influence, he explained after reviewing the documents. Says you manipulated your grandmother while she was mentally incompetent. She wasn't incompetent. She was sharp as a tack until the day she died. Can you prove that? Her doctor can, her neighbours can. Hell, she was still doing crossword puzzles in pen. Good, we'll need all of that. They're also requesting a full mental evaluation of the deceased, which means exhuming medical records, interviewing caregivers, the works. My stomach dropped. How long will this take? Months, maybe longer if they drag it out. That afternoon, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. Gillian had been busy. Please pray for our family during this difficult time. My cousin has been struggling with mental health issues since her divorce and has unfortunately turned against the people who love her most. She's making wild accusations and legal threats. We're heartbroken, but trying to get her the help she needs. The comments were brutal. So sad when family turns on each other. Mental illness is no joke. Hope she gets treatment. I always thought she seemed unstable. My hands shook as I scrolled through dozens of similar posts. She'd painted me as the crazy one again, just like always. Kyson found me that evening, sitting on my porch with a bottle of wine and my laptop, reading the comments. Don't do that to yourself, he said, closing the laptop. They're calling me delusional, unstable. One person said I should be committed. People who don't know you, people who only heard one side. But what if they're right? What if I am crazy for thinking I deserve this? Hey, he sat down beside me. Look at me. You built this place with your own hands. You survived an abusive marriage. You're standing up to people who've spent your whole life tearing you down. That's not crazy. That's brave. Doesn't feel brave. Brave never feels brave when you're doing it. Wednesday brought more drama. Someone had called Adult Protective Services, claiming I was hoarding and living in unsafe conditions. The caseworker, a tired-looking woman named Janet, showed up with a clipboard and a sceptical expression. "I'm here to investigate reports of unsafe living conditions," she said. "Come in." She stepped inside and stopped. Her clipboard lowered as she took in the gleaming floors, the organised kitchen, the built-in storage. "This is not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Based on the report, I was expecting squalor, hoarding, mental health crisis." She walked around, making notes. "This is actually quite nice." "Thank you. Who filed the complaint?" "My family." Janet's expression shifted. "Ah, family disputes. I see a lot of those." She finished her inspection and signed off on her paperwork. "You're clearly fine. I'll close this case today." Thursday brought Sadie to my door. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled. "Can I come in?" "Of course." She sat at my kitchen island, fidgeting with her phone. "I've been recording them," she said suddenly. "What?" "My mum, Grandma Madison, Aunt Maren. Ever since the gathering, I started recording our conversations." She pulled out her phone. "I wanted to understand what was happening, why everyone was so angry. Sadie, you don't have to—" "Listen to this." She played an audio file. Gillian's voice filled the room. "She's always been manipulative. Remember when she was a kid? Always playing victim, making everyone feel sorry for her." Madison's voice. "I should have been firmer with her. All that coddling after Angelo left just made her worse." Maren. "Maybe we should have seen this coming. She was always jealous of what everyone else had." Gillian again. "The thing is, we can't let her get away with this. If we don't fight back, she'll think she can walk all over us forever." Madison. "Exactly. She needs to learn there are consequences for turning against family." Sadie stopped the recording. "There's more. Hours of it. They're planning to drag this out as long as possible. They want to break you financially, so you'll have to settle." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I remember being 8 years old and watching you cry at Christmas dinner after they made fun of your homemade gifts. I remember being 12 and seeing you flinch every time Uncle Angelo raised his voice. I remember being 16 and watching you apologize for existing." Tears ran down her cheeks. "They're lying about you. They've always lied about you, and I'm tired of pretending I don't see it." Friday night, I was washing dishes when I saw a figure moving around the main house with a flashlight. I grabbed my phone and watched through the security camera app as Madison jimmied open a window and climbed inside. She went straight to Grandma's old bedroom, pulling out drawers, rifling through papers. Then she found something, a small journal, and I watched her tear out pages and stuff them in her purse. But the real shock came when she walked outside. Instead of leaving, she pulled out a lighter and set fire to the torn pages right there in the driveway. I had it all on camera. Madison destroying evidence, trespassing, probably trying to hide whatever Grandma had written about the family's treatment of me. They weren't just trying to steal the house, they were trying to erase the truth. But truth has a way of surviving, even when people try to burn it. The courthouse smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. I sat at the plaintiff's table with my lawyer, watching Gillian and Madison whisper frantically with their attorney. They'd dressed for the occasion. Madison in her best church outfit, Gillian in a conservative navy suit that screamed, "Responsible family member." All rise for the Honourable Judge Martinez. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who looked like she'd seen every family drama imaginable. "This is a contest of will and property transfer," she said, settling into her chair. "Ms. Wood, you're claiming undue influence. Present your case." Gillian's lawyer stood up. "Your Honour, my client believes her grandmother was manipulated during a vulnerable time. The defendant isolated Mrs. Green from her family and convinced her to transfer valuable property under suspicious circumstances." "Suspicious how?" "The transfer was done in secret, without informing other family members. Mrs. Green was elderly and potentially susceptible to manipulation." Judge Martinez looked at my lawyer. "Response?" "Your Honour, Mrs. Green was mentally competent when she made this decision. She had full legal representation and made this choice after years of observing family dynamics. We have documentation proving her mental capacity and witnesses to her intentions." "Let's hear from the witnesses." Dr. Patterson, Grandma's physician, testified first. "Mrs. Green was sharp until the end. No signs of dementia or cognitive decline. She specifically asked me about the legal requirements for property transfer just 3 months before her death." Mrs. Henderson from next door was next. "Serenity was clear-minded and determined. She told me she was tired of watching Lillian get treated poorly by her family. She said Lillian was the only one who visited without wanting something." Then came the bombshell. My lawyer pulled out a tablet. "Your Honour, we have security footage from the defendant's property showing the plaintiff's mother, Madison Bowen, breaking into the main house and destroying evidence." The video played on the courtroom screen. Madison climbing through the window, searching through papers, tearing pages from a journal, burning them in the driveway. Madison's face went white. "I was looking for family photos. I had every right—" "You had no right," Judge Martinez said sharply. "That property belongs to the defendant. This is breaking and entering, plus destruction of evidence." Gillian's lawyer looked panicked. "Your Honour, my client had no knowledge of her mother's actions." "Maybe not, but it raises questions about the family's credibility." My lawyer stood up. "Your Honour, we also have audio recordings of the plaintiffs discussing their strategy to financially exhaust the defendant through prolonged litigation." He played Sadie's recordings. Gillian's voice filled the courtroom. "We can't let her get away with this. If we don't fight back, she'll think she can walk all over us forever." Madison's voice. "She needs to learn there are consequences for turning against family." Judge Martinez frowned. "Where did these recordings come from?" "The plaintiff's own daughter, who was disturbed by what she heard." Gillian spun around to stare at Sadie, who sat in the gallery looking miserable but determined. "You recorded us?" Gillian's voice was barely a whisper. "I recorded the truth," Sadie said. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Gillian cornered Sadie. "How could you do this to your own mother? How could you lie about Aunt Lillian for my entire life? She's manipulated you too, can't you see that? No, Mom, you manipulated me. You made me think she was the problem when you were the ones treating her like garbage." Madison tried to approach me. "Lillian, honey, we can work this out. Family shouldn't fight like this." "We stopped being family the day you decided I was disposable." "That's not true. We love you." "You love having someone to blame. There's a difference." When court resumed, my lawyer presented the final piece of evidence, bank records going back 15 years. "Your Honour, these records show a pattern of financial exploitation. The plaintiffs repeatedly borrowed money from Mrs. Green with promises to repay. None of these loans were ever repaid." The numbers were staggering. Madison had borrowed over $30,000 for various emergencies. Gillian had taken $15,000 for her business venture that never materialised. Even Maren had borrowed $8,000 for her son's medical bills that turned out to be cosmetic surgery. Mrs. Green documented every loan in her personal records, my lawyer continued. She also documented her growing frustration with family members who only contacted her when they needed money. He read from Grandma's journal, the parts Madison hadn't managed to burn. "Lillian is the only one who calls just to talk, the only one who remembers my birthday without being reminded. the only one who sees me as more than a bank account. Judge Martinez had heard enough. Based on the evidence presented, I find no indication of undue influence. Mrs. Green was mentally competent and had valid reasons for her decision. The property transfer stands as legally binding. She looked directly at Gillian and Madison. Furthermore, I'm referring the breaking and entering incident to the district attorney's office. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Someone had leaked the story to the local news. Ms. Ellis, how does it feel to win against your own family? I looked back at Madison and Gillian, who were arguing with their lawyer on the courthouse steps. It doesn't feel like winning, I said. It feels like justice. That night, Sadie knocked on my door. I'm dropping out of college, she said. I want to help you with whatever you're planning next. And still, part of me wondered if healing would feel this lonely. The main house looked different with fresh paint and new windows. Kyson had outdone himself with the renovations. Wide doorways for accessibility, ramps instead of stairs, a commercial kitchen that could feed 20 people. The first group arrives next week, I told Sadie as we hung the sign by the front door, Serenity House, a safe haven for women in transition. Are you nervous? Terrified, but good terrified. We'd spent the past 6 months transforming Grandma's house into something she would have loved, a place where women could rebuild their lives after leaving abusive situations. The insurance money from Madison's water damage had covered most of the renovations. Poetic justice at its finest. Lillian? A voice called from the driveway. I turned to see a woman about my age climbing out of a beat-up Honda, a teenage boy beside her. She had that look I recognized, the careful way of moving, the eyes that scanned for exits. I'm Rebecca. I called about the program. Of course, come in. I showed her through the house, 6 private bedrooms, communal living areas, a playroom for children, an office where residents could work on resumes and job applications. How long can people stay, she asked. As long as they need to get back on their feet. Some women need a few weeks, others need months. There's no timeline. And it's really free. Completely free. We have donations, grants, and... I smiled. A very generous endowment from the property owner. Rebecca's son, maybe 16, had been quiet the whole tour. Now he spoke up. What about school? There's a bus stop right at the end of the driveway, and we have tutoring volunteers if you need help catching up. Can we see our room? Rebecca asked. I led them upstairs to a sunny corner room with 2 beds, a desk, and a small sitting area. It's beautiful, Rebecca whispered, touching the handmade quilt on one of the beds. I can't believe this is real. It's real, and you're safe here. That evening, Sadie and I sat on my porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. She'd transferred to the local community college and was studying social work. Your mum called me today, I said. Sadie's face tightened. What did she want? To tell me you're making a mistake, that I'm a bad influence. What did you tell her? That you're 19 and capable of making your own decisions. She's been texting me constantly, saying I'm betraying the family. Are you having second thoughts? Sadie was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I miss how simple it was when I believed their version of everything, when you were the problem and they were the victims. But then I remember watching you flinch every time Uncle Angelo raised his voice. I remember how they talked about you when you weren't there. I remember how they laughed when you got that black eye, like it was somehow your fault. A car pulled into the driveway. Kyson climbed out carrying takeout bags. Chinese food delivery, he announced, and before you ask, yes, I got extra spring rolls. We ate on the porch, talking about the solar panel installation scheduled for next week and the garden beds we wanted to plant in the spring. Normal conversation about normal things, something I'd never had with my biological family. Oh, I almost forgot, Kyson said, pulling out his phone. Did you see the news? He showed me the local paper's website. The headline read, Local Woman Charged with Embezzlement. Madison's mugshot stared back at me. The article detailed how she'd been stealing from the church's building fund for over 2 years. "Karma's a bitch," Sadie said. "Language," I said automatically, then laughed. "But yeah, it really is." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Gillian. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know I'm getting help. Real help. Therapy. I'm starting to understand some things about our family that I didn't want to see before." I showed the text to Sadie. "Are you going to respond?" "Maybe, eventually, when I'm ready." "What would you say?" "That I hope she finds peace, but that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean letting people back into your life who've proven they can't be trusted." The next morning, I walked to Grandma's grave with fresh flowers and the court documents declaring me the rightful owner of the property. "I did it, Grandma," I said, kneeling beside her headstone. "I built something beautiful from the pieces they left behind." The wind rustled through the oak trees, and for a moment I could swear I heard her voice. "I always knew you would, sweetheart." Walking back to the house, my house, I saw Rebecca's son shooting baskets at the hoop Kyson had installed. Rebecca sat on the front steps, talking on the phone about a job interview. This was what healing looked like. Not the absence of scars, but the presence of hope. Not the erasure of the past, but the creation of a different future. They called it a box. But inside these walls I found power, peace, and proof that karma comes home eventually.